Ratcheting up action against Stellantis where it hurts. What do we know?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Matt, this is this is Stellantis' biggest plant in the U.S. and it relies on its, like all of the Detroit automakers, it derives a lot of profits from pickup trucks. And particularly this plant, which people call it Shaft here in Detroit, like Sterling Heights, Michigan, they make the new version. So this is the pickup truck. This is the biggest selling vehicle for Stellantis in the U.S. But they rely on three different places: the Shaft, and they have another plant in Warren, Michigan, and they also have a plant in Mexico that makes heavy duty. But their strategy is to do the newest trucks with all the nice bells and whistles. Those are the most pricey, the most profitable. Those are made at Shaft. So that is what UAW President Shawn Fain is taking down right now. And he really did telegraph this last Friday when he gave an update, because he said, we're close. And my sources were all telling me last week that Stellantis and the UAW were in fact getting really close, and Stellantis was possibly the closest to getting a tentative agreement. But it's also true that this is a very important point. Stellantis has more temp workers than GM or Ford. It's about 12% of their workforce. And these are people that currently start out at $15.78 an hour. It's about a buck less than the same job at GM and Ford. So Stellantis has always, they've had a lot of temp workers, and so they've had that labor cost advantage over GM and Ford here in the U.S. And I think that the UAW wants to close that gap with all of them. They don't want temp workers being such a huge lever that companies can pull for cheap labor. I've done a lot of stories about how people feel like they're being overworked. They don't have as many rights. They don't get the same financial benefits as a full-time UAW member does. And this is another key difference between the UAW companies or UAW represented companies and non-union shops, Toyota, Honda, Volkswagen. Non-union companies tend to have more temp workers in their workforce. So the UAW is really, they want to get rid of abusive, they call it abuse. Okay, I'll just say reliance on temps to control your labor costs. They want to end that at the D3. And, they're also talking about going after non-union auto companies after this strike is settled. So everything they're doing here is not just about D3. It's about the UAW wants to set new labor standards for automotive manufacturing in the use that they are then going to try to bring to other car companies.
And Gabby, as Matt mentioned, you've covered every twist and turn here, but it does feel like even with this new strike action, it opens up the door to a new story. As you allude to the idea here that maybe Shawn Fain is ratcheting up pressure on the Stellantis CEO, who really helped in the turnaround story for the company, very specifically through keeping a lid on costs.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, Stellantis has been an amazing turnaround story in the very short tenure. This merger, it was closed in January 2021. So we're not even, how many years is that? It's almost 2 years out. And, Stellantis's profit margin was over 14% in the first half of this year compared to 9.7% at GM and I think around 8% at Ford. So how do they achieve that? Stellantis is notorious and respected and admired on Wall Street for his ability to control costs and, find efficiencies. And that whole reputation, that strategy is just, running headlong into the UAW in this kind of revitalized labor movement. So it's going to be very interesting to see how much Stellantis is willing to, give, how much more they're willing to go. Are they going to give up those advantages they've had to be more on par with GM and Ford? And what is that going to do to Tavares's, long-term financial goals that he says he needs to make EVs affordable?